Good evening and welcome to the York Festival of Ideas. My name is Ahmed and I will be chairing the event this evening. Thank you for joining us. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all here. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, Mr. Mir Rahimi. Mir Rahimi is a dedicated advocate for peace, justice, and human rights. Born in Afghanistan, he moved to the UK in 2001 and went on to earn a master's degree in political theory from the London School of Economics and Political Science in 2011. He has worked with charities, NGOs, and the United Nations across multiple countries to support displaced and vulnerable communities, and has spoken at major global forums, including high-level United Nations conferences. As the founder of Edu Change, a UK-based charity, Mir empowers young people from displaced and disadvantaged backgrounds to succeed in education and become leaders of positive change. He will be talking about his book, Across Mountains, Land, and Sea Tonight. Mir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khalil, for that very kind introduction. And thank you all for joining us this evening to hear about my story in this book, Across Mountains, Land, and Sea. So I would like to start off by reading the opening chapter in this book, and then I will talk a bit more about the book and the story behind it. So I hope you enjoy your time this evening. I was born in a house with bullet holes in the walls, just before dawn in the middle of a winter, in the mountains of central Afghanistan. My mother, whose response to any news, however bad, was "God is kind," gave birth to me alone in the freezing darkness. I imagine first her, then my cries, echoing through the empty valley, our animals lifting their heads up with curiosity in the next room. Everyone left alive in the valley who was not fighting had fled, but my mother had been too pregnant to leave. She would not have left even if she could have. She believed it was better to die in your own home than on the run. I have often thought of that. Now, that passage captures many of the themes at the heart of this book: childhood, home, loss, resilience, hope, and the journeys that shape our lives. Now, before I go there, I would like to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what war looks like through the eyes of a child? That question lies at the heart of this book, a memoir shaped not only by my own journey, but by the journeys of countless others whose lives have been shattered by war, loss, and unimaginable destructions around the world. It is not merely a personal story, it is a mosaic of exiled hearts, a tapestry woven from the voice of children whose lullabies were gunfire and whose childhoods vanished in the long shadows of war. But it is also a story about the search for belonging, about rebuilding adversity after adversity, about the journeys that shape who we become. I was born in Afghanistan, a Hazara community, a people who have endured generations of persecution, violence, and displacement. My earliest memories are not of playgrounds or birthday parties. They are machine gun fire in the distance and rockets tearing through the night sky. War was not something happening somewhere else or on television screens or in the news. It was the landscape of my childhood until one day I was forced to leave. I crossed mountains, lands, and seas, clinging to the thinnest thread of hope on the Mediterranean. As a storm gathered around us, I nearly drowned. Beside me was a young boy named Bilal. As the waves rose around, he cried out, "I don't want to die. I want to see my mother again." Years have passed, but I still hear his voice. In many ways, Bilal came to represent countless displaced children I would later meet as a humanitarian around the world. Different countries, different languages, different circumstances, but often the same hopes: to be safe, to learn, to belong, and to dream of a peaceful world. For many people, displacement is discussed through numbers and statistics. But I have never met a statistic. I've met children. Children with names, dreams, fears, and families. Children who should have been worrying about school, football, or what they wanted to be when they grow up, not whether they would survive another day. Years later, the image of a 3-year-old Alan Kurdi from Syria reminded the world briefly of the children whose journeys end before their stories are ever heard. As I grew older, I came to understand something simple. Refugees are not born, they are made. They are made when war enters a home, their home, when fear replaces safety, when ordinary life becomes impossible. Long before there is a refugee, there is a child, there is a family, there is a home, but all interrupted by war. No child enters the world dreaming of becoming a refugee. No child dreams of crossing mountains, deserts, and seas. No child imagines saying goodbye to everything familiar. Children becomes refugees when adults fails to protect peace. They become refugees when war, persecution, and injustices makes ordinary life impossible. If we want fewer refugees, we must build a peaceful world, a world with fewer wars, conflicts, and distractions. Because my journey, like the journeys of millions of others, began not with a search for opportunity, but peace and safety. Eventually, I arrived in Britain. In many ways, it was not the end of a journey. It was only the beginning. The most difficult journeys are not always geographical. Sometimes they are journeys of rebuilding, of learning to belong, of becoming the person you want to be. Education became another journey altogether, not across borders, but across knowledge, understanding, and self-discovery. It opened doors I never knew existed and helped me understand not only the world around me, but my place within it. Curiosity became its own form of hope, the belief that there was still more to learn, more to understand, and more to discover. War steals many things from a child: certainty, routine, home, sometimes family, sometimes childhood itself. It could not take away my determination to learn, to discover, and to know more. And it could not take away hope. Looking back, I often think about the people who helped me along the way: a teacher who encouraged me, a friend who believed in me, a stranger who extended kindness when I needed most. Their acts may have seemed small at the time, yet they changed the course of a life. They reminded me that history is not shaped only by conflicts, governments, or great powers. Often it is shaped by ordinary people choosing courage and compassion over fear and indifference. Home, I have come to realize, is not only a place. Sometimes it's a language. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it is simply the feeling that you are seen, understood, and accepted. That is why losing a home can be so painful, because we lose not only a place, we lose part of ourselves. Yet, perhaps that is also why human beings are so remarkable. Even after profound loss, we continue searching for belonging. We continue rebuilding. We continue hoping. Later, through my work with displaced communities in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, I discovered something remarkable. Whether in Afghanistan, Sudan, Syria, Uganda, Greece, or Britain, people wanted many of the same things: safety, dignity, and opportunity, and a place where they belonged. The details of our lives may differ, but our hopes are often surprisingly similar. For many years, I carried all these stories in silence. Eventually, I realized that stories like grief cannot remain buried forever. They ask to be told, not because telling them changes the past, but because remembering is one way of honoring those who lived it. Stories help us resist the disappearance of people into statistics, headlines, and political debates. They remind us that every statistic has a face, has a voice, a family, and even a dream. When we tell stories, we preserve memory and restore dignity. When we listen, we begin to understand one another. And when we understand, we create the possibility of healing, of unity, and of progress. The power of stories is not simply that they teach us about other people, it is that they help us recognize something of ourselves in them. Their fears, their hopes, their belonging, their longing to belong, their search for meaning. And in doing so, stories remind us of our shared humanity. After all those labels and differences, we are the same, part of the same family, human family, human race. I rode across mountains, land, and sea not only to tell my story, but to honor the stories of countless displaced children and families whose voices are too often unheard. In sharing these stories, I hope we do more than bear witness. I hope we create connection, because stories can cross borders that politics cannot. They can build bridges where fear has built walls. And perhaps that is where understanding begins, not when we all agree, but when we choose to listen. Looking back, I realized that my journey was never only geographical. Yes, it took me across mountains, land, and sea, but it also took me across cultures, traditions, languages, and stories, across loss and belonging, across fear and hope, across ignorance and understanding, and through education, across new worlds of knowledge and possibilities. Because every meaningful journeys or stories changes. It enlarges our world. It teaches us new ways of seeing that world. And if we all are open to it, it brings us closer to one another. First, I thought this story was about war, because that's what I knew, or about migration, because that's what I had to learn. But over time, I came to realize it is really a story about home. What happens when we lose it, what it takes to rebuild it, and how the journeys we survive can change who we become. Because sooner or later, life has a way of uprooting one way or another. Through loss, through change, through grief, through uncertainty. And in those moments, we are all searching for many of the same things: meaning, connection, dignity, and hope, and a place to belong. Today, my mother remains in Afghanistan. Age and illness have taken much of her physical strength, and yet they have not diminished her spirit. She still carries the same quiet courage that carried our family through some of its difficult days. And whenever I think about resilience, I think of her, not because she lived an easy life, but because she never allowed hardship to extinguish her humanity. I realize while I spent many years searching for home, I was also carrying part of it with me all along. In her courage, in her dignity, in her refusal to surrender hope, in the values she passed on to her children, and perhaps that is what this story is ultimately about, not simply where we come from, but what we carry with us. Memories, the people in our life, the stories, and hope. Because home is not always a place we can return to. Sometimes it becomes part of who we are. So if there's one thing I hope you can take away from this story or this book, it is this: never underestimate the power of hope. Never underestimate the power of compassion. And never underestimate the power of a story. Because a story can restore dignity. A story can give voice to those who have been silenced. A story can help us see one another more clearly and closely. And sometimes it can find us. It can help us find our way home. Sometimes the greatest journeys are not the ones measured in miles, or lands and seas. They are the journey through loss, uncertainty, and change. The journeys that teach us who we are, the journeys that help us understand one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mir. That is very extraordinarily moving and wise as well. It's so beautiful, actually, to learn this experience that you are sharing with us. Let us see if there are any questions. I would like to, for example, because I was moved by actually some parts in the book while I was reading it. So one of the parts that actually reminds me of James Joyce's stream of consciousness technique, in which when you were in the school in Ham Bay, you started this on page 101 by talking about the boy who was bullying you in the school here in England. It starts with, where is Bin Laden? Then he's calling you Bin Laden. Where is fucking Bin Laden? The tall boy was smiling, but he was not friendly. Even if I hadn't understood what he was saying, I would have known that. His face was close enough to mine so that I could smell the cigarettes on his breath. His friends were laughing behind him. As he stared down at me, I realized the canteen had become silent. The chatter and movement suddenly stopped. The air felt thick. People were staring at us. I looked sideways at Serenity and Sarah, who had put down their sandwiches with their eyes wide. I swallowed. I had thought a new school would be a chance to start again. This is so beautiful, to make use of everything I'd learned in the last year. This is so beautiful. This is like, you are standing here for so many refugee boys who actually go to school and face this bullying and have these experiences, which are actually very traumatic to many of them, in addition to the trauma they already had through their journeys. But they also, like, being here also like this and facing these kind of challenges or situations also adds to the trauma. So thank you very much for that. And there is also, we have here a question. Let's move to the question before reading another paragraph from the book. Here there is a question from Linda Parton. Linda Barton, she says, have you been able to see your mom since you left your home?
I think the short answer is yes. I have. I have been able to reunite with her, and but of course, at the moment, we live in different parts of the world.
Yeah, thank you. There is another question from Brenda. Hello, having been forced to leave your home and family behind as a child, what has your journey taught you about what truly makes a place feel like home? And what does the word home mean to you now?
Yeah, so this is from Linda.
This is from Brenda.
Brenda, thank you very much for that very beautiful question. And well, I think as I sort of mentioned in my brief talk previously, home is something that, although we think it's a physical being, like a building, and you live inside it, and that's the home. That's only sort of a small part of home. And me being displaced, and millions of others, whether forced because of war or because of other reasons. There are so many other reasons that people do have to leave their home. And over time, it changes, I think, from a physical place to a memory, to or a person, or sometimes once you're displaced, you often just don't have a home. So it's your home is on your shoulders or in your head, because it's not always easy to just feel home somewhere or anywhere. You need that connections. I think it starts off with connections. The people that see you, understand you, or respect you or love you, or somewhere that you belong. Then that's somewhere that you can feel home and comfortable. That doesn't come easily. It takes time, and it takes a number of things to do. So I think time is one of the things. For quite some time, I felt I did not have home. Wherever I would go, I would just think that I need to go again. I've traveled a lot. I think first it was just, I guess I was searching for a home. And then I started working as a humanitarian with humanitarian organizations with displaced people. So that helped me to do sort of moving around whilst sort of internally searching for a place or somewhere. And I think my work for some time gave me that feeling, what I was doing, helping people, or making that suffering that they are going through in refugee camps, across borders, or internally displaced people where they flee war and conflict in one part of their country to another. Helping out helped make me feel home. So what you do is important. I think it gave me that sense of fulfillment. I guess that's something that you get with home as well. And I think after many years of working internationally and traveling and backpacking and searching, I returned to a town or city here in Canterbury, where I initially arrived, and this is where I went to school, college, university. So I've got a lot of memories and connections here and there. So I finally returned back here, and I'm glad to say that I do feel home, and I do feel, as I said, I understand the language, the culture, and also have friends, and so some of the things that comes with that feeling, I've returned, and I'm here. So and I do feel home here. So I guess it really is a journey of, once you're displaced, you don't know where you're gonna end up and feeling home. Sometimes you never do. Because you may never find that home. You may always be displaced, even if you are living somewhere permanently, that you may still not feeling home. And I guess, Ahmed, you may have, in terms of sort of similar experiences of, even if you have left that, where you're born, and then you had to leave, and then you go back, you may not feel home again, or may may feel accepted again.
Yeah, we are here to talk about you, not me. But yes, I do. I did I was rescued back in 2010, and was brought here actually to the UK as a rescued academic in 2010, and I had my first chance to see my country again in last year. After 15 years, 16 years, I don't know. I had the chance to see my country. I was so afraid actually to be there, and it's a very strange feeling, because you go there, as you said also when we were talking, like you are one of them, you look like one of them, but you are not. They do not see you as one of them, but at the same time, they do not see you as a foreigner. So it's a very weird feeling. So you are there. You used to be. It is your home, but you do not belong to it. It's a very weird situation, very weird feeling. So you feel like because you've been uprooted from your country and planted somewhere else, and that place where you were planted became your country, became the country, the home of your children, the home of your. So you've got to work there, you've got a house there, you've got everything there, you have got new memories there, new life, new culture. So when you go back, it's a very strange feeling. You don't feel that you have anything left in what used to be your home. So yes, it's a very strange feeling, a very weird feeling, very sad feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brand, I wish I had a sort of concrete answer, but unfortunately, I think once you uproot it, it's never guaranteed that you will feel home ever, or that home may be a memory or a language or just a place, or and it's very traumatic at times that you never have that feeling of home. So, but I'm glad that I think the place that I live now feels home, and so yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you very much, Mir. We've got two questions, I think, from the same person. It's anonymous, actually. How long did it take to form your first meaningful relationships, friendships that felt safe? Do you feel safe?
I think that also very deep psychological questions. Whoever has asked it, thank you. I think yes. So feeling safe, I think it really is. It depends in terms of what do you mean by feeling safe. But if you know. After arriving here in the UK, it's peaceful, no war, no conflict. You know that when you go to sleep, you're more likely that you're going to wake up in the morning still alive, and you're not afraid of the sounds of rocket propelled grenades breaking in the middle of the night. So safe in that sense, yes. But I think in more, I guess you're asking for more deeper psychological aspects of it. I think, again, once you are displaced for whatever reasons, then the notion of safety also is displaced with that. And just like you would never know if you would find a place that you could call home, and I think safety is comes with it. Yes, I do feel safe, but in terms of, I think there always that thing that something could happen to destabilize you or uproot you, or, you know, it could be psychological, but I think that feeling that you're asking is not always very certain to have. So in terms of your, I think the other element of your question was forming your friendship and relationships. And I think that too is very much in terms of not problematic, but in terms of unstable, because if you don't feel home, if you don't feel safe, if you still have the sort of thoughts, then that impacts your relationships. I did have it personally. I mean, I made friends, you know, did form you know, friendships, but also later on relationships. But I guess again, as I have been moving around physically, from, you know, I was in Australia for some time, I was in the Middle East, I was in Africa, and I think that also changes because it's not fixed, and that's partly because of geographically, when you move around, then you are not able to maintain those relationships where you left. If you're moving so often, then always that changes too. So with me, with my work for some years, things would change. So my friendships were where I was working or was staying. So, and then if that had changed and I had moved on to another country, that would also, if not change completely, it would move to a different stage. So yes, everything has been sort of dynamic, fluid, uncertain, and stable. As I say, perhaps that displacement, or physically or mentally, once you are displaced, I think you may never arrive at that first place that you were not displaced. You were placed safely. So again, things have been always dynamic, have been fluid, have been times interesting, and so it's not all negative. That there are positive elements in this story and many other stories, but changes, a lot of changes, a lot of unpredictability, uncertainty, but at the same time comes with it excitement, and all this other mixed human feelings and emotions. So just as the previous questions, I wish I had a sort of concrete answer, but I think it never is. It is as complex, as fluid, as unpredictable, as beautiful, as dynamic, that everything is sort of molded together. But again, I think it's a very good and deep and psychological questions, because I think what this book, what I was writing and I was aiming, was to touch not just at the surface levels of displacement that we always hear and see, whether that's in the media or whether that's on social media, what we hear, but I think the deeper aspects of displacement. Displacement happens, for me, it was because of war and conflict, but for someone else, it could be loss, grief, or wanting to change. Displacement happens, but the impacts or the changes that comes with it is very, very similar. So when you go to either you want to go or you end up is a place where things are different, and you have to find your way, navigate your place, navigate, whether that's a language, a culture, tradition, or people. You have to navigate your way and go through those changes. So yes, for me, things have been fluid, as I said, and changing, but and it still is, and I think that's again part of a journey where you do it physically, or a journey of life. So so I wish I had a sort of concrete, solid answer this, but I think that's how things have been progressing. But again, thank you very much for these very deeper questions that human experiences when displacement happens touches on those.
Thank you very much. Well, we've got many questions actually. Another question says, I understand that you were still a young child when you left. Who cared for you on your long journey and after you finally reached the UK?
And no one. So you survive. There was no one to care or look after. It was a journey that one day you would be crossing a border and then getting fired at from the border forces of whatever country that you were trying to cross. And sometimes it was on a flimsy dinghy in the Mediterranean. Sometimes it was walking for many days and nights in the mountains, woods and deserts, and sometimes it would be under a lorry, sometimes it would be in a lorry, sometimes so this was a journey, I guess. Smugglers would be some of the people would take you and from A to B, but not necessarily people to take care of you or to look after you, or you survive if you must, but a lot of people don't, and a lot of people, thousands drowned, die in deserts, and these are souls that you never hear from, and that's why, having seen and experienced and been through myself, I wanted to write this book to remember those experiences and the people who have never made it. Or to value those lives that you know that they come to life, they come to life in silence, they live in silence, they die in silence, and no one hear anything about them. So I hope that this is a story, at least it's a collective story, that when you read it, you at least know. And I think that is, as I said in my conversation before, is that sort of honoring those lives. Yeah. So I think I sort of digressed with the answer, but yeah, that's. Thank you.
Thank you, Mir. A question from Ting Zhu. I hope I'm pronouncing the name properly. Myself is also an immigrant. Thank you for sharing your story. What would you say to those who shout, or those who shouted at you, "Go home"? Especially like in the current political climate, what would you do? What do you suggest to reply to them in case?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, but thank you for that. I think you did. I mean, I didn't catch the name well, but thank you so much for that question. I think that also touches on one of the key themes that is quite current in terms of the narrative about refugees or asylum seekers or immigrants in general, and the people have a lot of views, and I think all these things comes from the people's own experiences. So if you hate someone or if you don't like someone, there are some experiences that have happened in your life to make you feel that way. Not necessarily that particular person or that group of people, but in your life, you've had experiences that made you unhappy. You don't feel home anymore. You feel displaced, or there's a grief, there's a loss, or there is hardship, whatever that is something that's internal, and by that sort of, for example, I mean, people haven't really. I've been quite lucky, I think, in terms of people have been quite nice. I mean, there has been elements that, as you read in the book, but generally, I experienced actually kindness and compassion. But that's again because I came 25, 26 years ago. But I think there are issues at the moment that in the UK, or generally in the Western world, in the UK, there are a lot of economic problem, cost of living crisis, things that's happened, not necessarily immigrants, but it happened with impacted people and their life. And people are under pressure and under stress, and then when you are under pressure and you are under stress and you are going through difficult times, mostly sort of economically, cost of living crisis and so on. But none of this happened because of the immigrants. But there are people out there who tell you, like, yeah, look at them, it's all their problem. So when you are searching for an answer because of what you're going through, and someone is coming to rescue you and saying, like, yes, they're the problem that you're going through, and then that's what happens. So I do actually empathize with a lot of people, and I understand the feelings that are there. And perhaps we are all in the same boat because of the people who are going through under stress. They need help, and also because of people like me, or immigrants in general, who are here, and I think we share a lot more than we think. We have a lot of similarities than we think, and we experience life because we live in the same sort of postcode area. We go to the same sort of shops. We have the same sort of places that we go, and that's because of the situation, the economic situation that we live in. So we share a lot, and I think we could use that experiences to understand one another more, to listen to each other more, and to listen to each other's stories. And once we understand one another, then we can create friendships, we can create connections, and we work together for the problems that we're all under, that sort of pressure. So I wouldn't extend a hand of friendship, and I would just say, let's talk. What is it that make you feel that way, and is there anything that I can do, or we can together as a team can do to help one another? So that would be my response, and I think that would be the better solution to talk to each other, have a conversation with one another, tell each other our stories, problems, griefs, and once we share, we understand. Once we understand, we can create friendships and connections, and with that, and unity, and with that, we can work towards a better future for all of us. It's not about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mir. Well, before we come to an end, we don't have much left. I just would like to read the closing paragraph in the book, which is actually very important. I believe it's a message. It says, if we all do what we must together, we can make a real difference to the lives of millions of uprooted and suffering people. We can heal the wounds of wars. We can give homes to the homeless and hope for the hopeless. Together, we can ease suffering and make a real difference in making this world a better and brighter place for everyone, every child and every man and woman, to live in peace and with dignity. So let's not give up on the millions of innocent, oppressed, and uprooted children and people who die in despair. Above all, let's not forget that peace, human rights, and humanity are still worth fighting for. This is amazing. This is so moving. And thank you very much for that. We can have one more question, actually, from Brenda again. And here she talks about, after everything you've been through, what everyday thing in the UK felt so strange that you thought, I survived mountains and seas, but I was not ready for this?
I think a lot of things, as I said, yes, I survived, mountains and stormy seas, and it's still, but I think every journey that you start, and when I came here with very little English, and then I started school all of a sudden, never been to one before. So I had survived a lot of tough times, but this journey of learning the language, learning the culture, making connections and friends, and so I would say it was not any easier than the previous journey. As I said, as I've done all these, I've survived these tough times, then I can do anything? No, because every journey has its own challenges. It's unique challenges that even if you have whatever you've survived before, you're not prepared for it. So, you take it as it is, and it's a new and fresh challenge that it requires its own unique response and solutions. So, now I feel quite at ease here in the UK because I have managed to learn the language. I've managed to navigate my way through, initially sort of social services, and then education, and then work, and then sort of being part of the community and making connections. So now it is somehow easy to deal with, but again, I think it's always every challenge or every journey that you have, yes, you have developed those transferable skills, but it still has those new, unique challenges that you may not be prepared. So I cannot really think of anything, one solid thing or answer, but just generally, I try to take everyday thing as that every day, as a new challenge, as a new.
Well, maybe the question was about something that like that even sounds or look or feels more challenging than what you have been through. So, for example, I'll tell you about myself. After also I have been through so many fatal challenges and risks. But now in the UK, I say to myself, I survived all, I survived kidnapping, I've survived torture, etc., but I'm not ready for this. That thing, for example, is the bills, the tickets, the mail. The mail scares me. When I hear this voice of the mail coming through the door, I feel like very afraid, because usually it is either a ticket or a fine or some kind of a tax, some kind of payment you need to make.
Yeah.
So that is something that is really scary and traumatic, which you have survived mountains and land, but you were not prepared for that.
Yeah. I think that's now that you sort of expanded on that. So when I was with a very kind foster family, and then I grew up. I was 17, and I got a place at sixth form away from the place here in Canterbury, though that was in Maidstone. And I was told that I was not ready, and I could not live on my own, that I should have stayed longer. And I said, look, when you are at that sort of age as well, you feel like, you can do anything. And the fact that I had been through and survived a lot of those adversities had made me even more like, yeah, of course. I mean, I've survived that. And do you think I can't just live on my own? But I went there and I left foster family, and then went there and tried to live on my own, and I could not. There is a couple of chapters in the book about how lonely I felt, how depressed I felt, how I eventually actually had to leave because I got sick and came back. And that made me, that feeling that I had, that I'd survived mountains and seas, and therefore why can't I just live on my own? It sounds quite, it should be quite easy, but actually it wasn't. And I did not survive that. And I had to leave sixth form and return to Canterbury. So so it has happened. There's I think there's a chapter that touches on the challenges of living here, not just sort of the challenges of living in war or in countries in your journey, but also there are quite a few chapters in the challenges that I have faced here whilst in education or just simply living here. So yes, there are those
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, loneliness is one of the biggest challenges you face here. The difficulty to integrate with a new culture. These are very big challenges. Well, we now come to the end of our time. Mir, thank you very much. This was very educational, thought-provoking. Thank you also for answering the questions from the audience. If you would like to purchase a copy of Mir's book, Across Mountains, Land and Sea, copies will be available from our partner booksellers, Fox Lane Books.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.